It's September, the year 2000, and the world is in the grip of wizard fever. With J.K. Rowling's spellbinding series of novels set to make the leap from page to screen, life is about to change for one young boy. Looking back at his time at Hogwarts, Daniel Radcliffe gives Sky Movies a rare insight into his life as Harry Potter.
Whatever opportunities I get for the rest of my life, 99% of them, you can trace it back to the fact that I got this amazing job when I was 10. School wasn't really a place I particularly enjoyed being. Basically all my school reports said more or less the same thing from my teachers, which was, we really like Dan, but he's useless. I was really upset one day, and my mum said to me, "Yeah, but Dan, you've got social skills." And I said, "Yeah, but they don't count," you know. And I really didn't feel like they did. I certainly had no aspirations towards acting. There's all this stuff I sometimes get told about myself from, you know, sometimes journalists say, you know, apparently you wanted to act from the age of 5. And, well, yeah, when I was 5, I wanted to act, and when I was 6, I wanted to be in the army, and when I was 7, I wanted to be an astronaut, and when I was, you know, it wasn't like I think I saw a pantomime production of Aladdin when I was 5, and I turned to my mum and said, "I want to be an actor." And my mum just looked at me and said, "No, you don't." I remember when I was 9 and going through a particularly awful trot at school and just couldn't, you know, I was doing really badly at the work. I at that point wasn't particularly popular with a couple of my teachers, and because I was disruptive, not in a malicious way, just in, as I said, just because I was so hyper and kind of excitable and couldn't concentrate on anything. And I remember the woman, Sue Latimer, who then became my agent, she said, "Well, they're doing auditions for David Copperfield at the moment. You know, why don't you send him up for that? Just because that's an experience. The experience of auditioning is not something that anyone else in the class will have had." So she said, "Why don't you, you know, send him up for that, and that way he'll have something a bit different to talk about at school, something he'll have done that no one else has." No one thought I'd get it. I'd done one school play when I was, again, about 5 or 6, where it was a production of Nellie the Elephant, and I was a monkey in the background. So yeah, and so they sent me up, no one thought I'd get it, and I was one of the first kids they saw, and I ended up getting the part.
3, take 1.
Excellent. So Dan, we're trying some glass on you. Can you hold your head up a little bit? Yeah, turn over this way to the little, turn back here.
Apparently, when Maggie Smith was asked to do Potter, she, having been in David Copperfield with me, told them about me and sort of recommended me, and so I kind of owe her big, really.
We made it. Can you imagine the look on McGonagall's face if we were late? That was bloody brilliant.
Oh, thank you for that assessment, Mr. Weasley. Perhaps it would be more useful if I were to transfigure Mr. Potter and yourself into a pocket watch. That way one of you might be on time.
We got lost.
Then perhaps a map. I trust you don't need one to find your seats.
We began pre-production on Harry Potter in October 1999. And we began to look for Harry, Ron and Hermione. And we looked and we looked and we looked.
People picked the most romantic part of that story, which is that I was suddenly spotted in a theatre, and then that was it. But it wasn't like that at all. I keep trying to tell the full story to people, and then they just keep, we'll just use the good bit.
It was a bit scary, given that we were about to start filming Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone in September, and we didn't have the lead character.
Apparently, when the casting director said, you know, who do you want to play Harry, or what kind of boy do you want to play Harry? Chris Columbus picked up a copy of the David Copperfield and said, I want a boy like this, and I want to audition this boy, I've heard, which is very, very flattering. And so they, originally the deal was to do, I think, all 6 or 7, it was, I think, to do 6 movies, all to be filmed in Los Angeles. And when my parents heard the terms of what it would be signing on for, they just said, "No way, that's far too big a disruption to his life. That would just, you know, not a chance." And it went away.
In a stroke of magic worthy of Harry himself, the opportunity for Daniel to play Potter didn't go away for long.
After the deal had then changed to signing on for 2 films to be filmed in England, and there were lots of strange coincidences that were happening at the time that my parents were going, okay, maybe this is something we should let him, or at least audition for. The final, obviously, of all those coincidences was sitting in the theatre and having David Heyman and Steve Clovis, the screenwriter, sitting in the row in front at a production of Stones in His Pockets. And that was and I remember David kept round looking at me during the production, and I was just going, this bloke keeps staring at me. You know, I had no idea who he was. And then I remember my parents sort of in the interval rushing me upstairs and taking me outside and we were hiding behind a pillar. I had no idea why. And just my mum and dad sort of debating, going, you know, should we leave? Should we go? You know, this is you know, he's going to ask questions, or he's going to, you know, I had no idea what was going on. And then we went back into the second half. I met David, I think, just before the second half started for the first time. And then the next day, David called in and said, look, please, will you let him audition for us? At which point my dad said, okay, he can audition. Still really not thinking that I'd get it. And I think, you know, by this point, they were only about 2 months away from the start of filming, so I've always said it was a mixture of desperation and, amongst other things, you know, that I ended up getting the part.
Okay, and action!
I never thought to look in here. I checked this out first turn for a bit of light reading.
This is light.
Shut up. If Filch comes round that corner any second now, we are dead meat.
Sorry.
We had screen tests, probably the first time I met Dan and Emma. Yeah, I remember it really well. And I also saw another version with different Ron, a different potential Ron, which was really weird to see that. I mean, just thinking kind of how easily kind of that kid could have got the part. He was really good. I thought he was better than me.
When I got the part, we had a photo session with Terry O'Neill, which was our first photo shoot, me, Rupert and Emma together, and I was referred to as the boy. Rupert was referred to as the other boy, and Emma was referred to as the girl for the whole thing. And which is fair enough, you know. Why should he know our names? You know, we're some kids. And then we got sent to the aptly named Landmark Hotel, which is where we spent 3 days sort of in hiding, and we did a press conference then in a different hotel, and that press conference was the first time that I was like, oh, okay, this is quite a big deal, really.
How do you feel about coping with all the fame and celebrity that's coming your way? Have you thought about it?
Not really.
Well, first about the part. How did you react to getting the role of Harry, the medical part of Harry Potter?
I cried, actually.
I remember there was a bit of stuff in the press about, well, why have they cast this boy who doesn't really even know anything about the films? Because they'd asked me anything about the books. Because they'd asked me a question in the press conference. I think the question was something like, do you know Lord Voldemort's real name? No idea. I mean, at that point, of course, I had the second book read to me, but I hadn't remembered it. And Emma and Rupert, very, very sweetly, both were trying to write down his real name and slide it towards me. And of course, we all thought we were being really subtle, but of course, you know, there's a room full of about 100 press in front of us, so you can't really get away with that. I mean, I just remember sitting in that room at the Landmark, just thinking, I've got to read these books now. I've got to get stuck in, and I did. And by the time we got to our first day of actual filming, I was on the 4th book already, which is much, much faster than I'd ever read anything before. So yeah, I was swatting up very, very quickly.
Snape.
just remember just being so excited and there just being so many people and, you know, the whole of that first movie was just like a blur. It's kind of... I was so excited every single day.
You're 10, you're 11, so you are absolutely just living from one second to the next, and it's all fantastic and it's fun. I do maintain there's no place more fun for a 12-year-old boy than a film set. It's just great because it's, you know, it's mad and there's lots of stuff to play with and climb on, and you know, I loved it. It was great.
Right then, first years, this way, please.
I remember that first day, the thing that was strange was that people were asking for my autograph, some of the other kids coming off the train. And yeah, I remember they asked for my autograph, and David Heyman came up to me and said, Dan, I'm going to give you a piece of advice, make your signature shorter. Which I didn't, and I should have. I should have just done DJR or something like that, but it's never changed. The only thing that's happened now is that rather than doing the D sort of just like a D, I now do like a sort of bit of a flourish. That's as exciting as my signature gets. Otherwise, it is just me writing my name in my terrible scrawl handwriting.
Attending his last ever Harry Potter premiere, the man whose story this was. Ladies and gentlemen, Daniel Radcliffe.
I just thought it was funny. I just always, and I think, you know, that's all I thought. I just thought, this is weird, but not in a negative way, not like, oh wow, this is really gonna, I can't cope with this pressure. I just thought it was silly and funny. It's very hard when you are in the middle of something this big to fully appreciate the way it, because it's always such a part of my life that I don't notice when it takes over the rest of other people's lives. For like a few weeks a year, when it becomes, you know, the posters are everywhere and the films come out and it's a really big deal and there's all those sort of the pre-release hype and stuff going on. So it's always yeah, but certainly at that age I had absolutely no clue that it was going to be so huge. I'm still getting to be out of school. I mean, that really was a huge incentive. I was obviously still having tuition on set, but just not being in school was massive, and having to, you know, do all this other stuff. It seemed like I never really even thought about it. I certainly don't remember thinking about it. If I did think about it, it would have just been, this is all a bit odd. But we had a great reaction to it as a family. Anytime we saw a poster with me on it, I'd just stand in front of it and I have a photo taken with it, like real sort of touristy kind of thing to do, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, it was. We didn't ever find it weird. We just found it, and I think I've always found it hilarious that I'm suddenly on posters and that I'm suddenly, you know, just the other day somebody sent me a picture of their son standing with a life-size Lego version of myself that had been not like a Lego head, but that had been built out of many pieces of Lego, and that stuff still is just really funny. I mean, bizarre, but yeah. I mean, I've